Hello, everyone. This is Ron Bush, and you're listening to the Information Playground. The Information Playground comes to you on WVLP. If you're in Valparaiso, Indiana, you're in a good spot to listen to us. We're at 103.1 FM. If you're streaming us, and I hope that you do, go to their website. That's WVLP.org. It's a great community radio station. They do a lot in the community, and you can be a part of that by going to WVLP.org and stream us from there. Also, while you're there, if you're interested, if you like this program, the Information Playground, you can underwrite us there, or you can underwrite some of the other fine programs that are on WVLP. You can also find us on just about any podcast station. I know we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and a bunch more. Or you can find us on YouTube at the Information Playground. So with that said, Ron Bush Consulting is a cybersecurity consultancy, and we have a great guest today, Sheriff Mark Lamb. Sheriff, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Ron. I'm looking forward to this today.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it as well. If you would, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm currently the Sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona. Our county is about 5,400 square miles, so it's the size of the state of Connecticut.
Wow.
Very big. Arizona only has 15 counties, so all of our counties are very large. Population about 500,000, and we run an agency about 600 employees. We're located between Phoenix and Tucson. And some of the biggest issues we deal with out here in our county are border security issues. We deal with the human trafficking and the drug trafficking. I tell people all the time, it's not about immigration anymore. This is about human trafficking and drug trafficking in this country, dealing with the multinational threats, the transnational threats of the cartels and other people. So that's one of the primary things. Of course, we have all our other things, domestic violence, drugs in our communities, suicides. I mean, we deal with everything else as well, but we are a full service sheriff's office. And I actually didn't start my career here. I started on an Indian reservation. Mm-hmm. And then I decided that I thought that law enforcement needed better leadership. So instead of being one of those guys who just complains about it, I put my money where my mouth was, and I decided to run for sheriff. And fortunately, the people of Pinal County chose me. And I just finished my first term, and now I'm going into my second term. And so it's been great.
You also just finished your book. Tell us the name of the book and where it can be found.
Yeah, I told you offline, Ron, I'm no author, but I'd like to punch things off the list. I think we only get one life, and I want to give it hell and give it the best I can and be the best I can. And so somebody brought up that I should write a book. And so my wife and I both actually wrote books and just released it on Amazon a couple of weeks ago. It's called American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World. And really in this book, I talk about my love for this country, freedom. And I know we're going to, do a whole show and be able to talk more about things in the book. But it's designed to just really talk about some of the things the values that I think we're losing touch with in this country, and things that we can maybe help us out, have a happier life, more fulfilling life, and get back to those values that made America a great country for so long. But yeah, you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it at americansheriff.com.
Excellent. Excellent. So, and I've got to tell you, I love the book. I just finished it. And of course, as I told you offline or before we started, it was easy for me to endorse the book because I agree with those things. I grew up, different circumstances completely. I've been to Panama, but as a tourist, so a couple of things. You mentioned human trafficking. I was in Sydney, Australia in 2014 for the Rotary International Conference. And it was there I discovered how much of a problem, because they have committees. Rotary, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a not-for-profit organization, been around since 1905. They've helped to eradicate the world of polio by working on it for the last 20 years. There's just two countries that still have an incidence of polio, and it's mostly because they don't allow Rotarians in to inoculate them. So without going that direction, let me just say that the information, there was a group that had formed, multinational group. So one woman was from America. She was out of Florida, had discovered human trafficking being a problem. She wrote a book, which I cannot recall the title of. I bought it back in 2014, but it identified and explained the problem and how every country on the planet has laws against human trafficking, against child slavery in particular, and yet every country on the planet has problems with human trafficking.
Absolutely.
Most Americans don't think that's true, and yet we're probably one of the worst. I don't know that, but we have a tendency to forget that most of the money is here, and most of the press identifies that as being here. So it only makes sense. That's where
Right.
you're going to sell the drugs. That's where you're going to try and sell the people. And
I think in
so,
this country, we try to pretend that we don't have the issue.
yeah,
We try to pretend that we are not like other countries. Well, I'll give you just some quick statistics. And I don't know whether I could be mixing up one year to the next, but over the last 2 years, one year there was 421,000. I believe last year, 2019, was 424,000 children that the FBI had listed as missing.
mhm,
Now, they estimate through NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they estimate that number could be as high as anywhere between 600 and 800,000 when you take into consideration children that maybe disappeared but were found before they were able to list them in the FBI, or children that were never ever listed at all as being missing, or they were exploited and the parents were okay with it. So we have a problem here in this country, and that's just children. That doesn't include the women. The
yeah,
majority of the women that come into my facility, my jail facility, have probably been trafficked for sex at some point. And if I were to give you a percentage, I would probably say that's as high as 80% of the women that come into my facility have been trafficked for sex at some point in their life. And so this is definitely something that is we take very serious,
mhm,
especially with the cartel on the south end. They exploit women all the time. They know it's a moneymaker, and that's going back to what you said. The reason why we have a problem worldwide is because there is a tremendous amount of money that is made off of exploiting children, exploiting women, the sex industry, the pornography industry,
mhm.
all of these industries. There is a tremendous amount of money. And unfortunately, I think with some of our politicians, I'm not saying they're complicit, but sometimes silence is complacency.
Yeah. I would tell you that I've been very disappointed in all the back and forth. Let me turn this guy off. In all the back and forth on these immigration issues. I mean, everybody says the system's been broke for the last 50 years. Nobody's done anything about it. But all they do is talk about the partisan side of things. I live in Arizona now. I lived in Indiana for 25 years. I can tell you right now, the news I got, because it was Northwest Indiana, it was Chicago news. The news I got out of Chicago is entirely different from the news I get down
Right.
here. Because down here, this many drugs came through and was found today. These many people perished. And that's the part that bothers me the most. They talk about the politics of the situation back and forth. People are dying trying to get across the border,
Oh, yeah.
either trying to get over themselves or the coyotes that are a part of the problem. The gangs, the criminals, basically, that are a part of the problem. Now, I mean, they put them in trucks like cattle, only they don't give them. I mean, we would do better for cattle. We would have it open where they could breathe. We wouldn't have them that close together. Sometimes those people die. Sometimes they find whole truckloads. And here I am talking. You've experienced this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's bothered me the most. It's not about immigration. It's about people, and
And it
people
bothers
dying.
us. And you're right. I've been telling people for a long time, this isn't a political issue, and this is not about immigration anymore.
Yeah.
This is about human trafficking and drug trafficking in this country. And if you truly care about human rights, you should absolutely care about border security, and you should want border security. You talk about these loads of people that come in. I know this is probably not the appropriate vernacular, but it describes it best, is we call them French fry loads, because everybody's standing up in the back of a truck
Mm.
like French fries out of a box. And it's so dangerous. We've recovered trucks where they just left the truck abandoned at a gas station with 30 people in the back in the middle of the Arizona summer, and we lost lives there. We
Yeah.
recovered a tremendous amount of drugs and hard drugs and dangerous drugs like heroin and meth and fentanyl coming into our country. Um, Down on the southern border, you have rape trees where they will rape the women that they're bringing across the border. The cartels will, the coyotes will, and they will hang their bras and panties on trees as trophies that they raped them.
Hmm.
They exploit the men. They use children as pawns. I know plenty of sheriffs where they've stopped vehicles and the children in the back of the vehicle had no idea who the people in the front seat of the vehicle were, and the people in the front had no idea who the children were. They use them as pawns, as decoys to be able to bring their human trafficking and drug trafficking into this country. And then, if you just want to talk about the money issue, 3 years ago when President Trump tried to pass his border security bill, I believe it was about a $5 billion bill to
Hmm.
build the wall and other pieces of border security. And it's important that people understand that it's not just the wall when we talk about border security. It is about technology. It's about having the right amount of troops on the ground. There's so much to it.
Right.
But 3 years ago, they talked about a $5 billion bill and they were balking at that. Yet they estimate that every year the United States loses about $130 billion in lost tax revenue from illegals who are in this country, who are failing to pay their taxes. So when you take a look at it like that, I mean, we've got a bunch of politicians that are completely ignorant to what is really going on. And that's just the fact of it. I offer it all the time. I say to congressmen and women, and I say to senators, come out here. I will show you firsthand what we deal with, and you can make up your own mind.
Hmm.
But I just challenge them to be educated. But no, they don't want to come out here. I have had yet, and I'm not trying to get into the politics of it, but I have only had congressmen and senators from one party come here. I have never had one from the other party come here. And what they do, they go into Washington, D.C., and they vote on bills that affect not only our state and our communities, but they affect the entire country. And they have no knowledge about what they're voting for. And furthermore, they're actually using it as a political tool, and they have no knowledge of what is really going on here in this country. And they're doing a disservice to their communities that they represent, and they are absolutely doing a disservice to this country. This isn't a political issue, folks. Any of your listeners out there, I'm a sheriff out here on the southern end of Arizona, and I'm telling you, we have a border security issue that needs to be addressed, and it's been better over the last 4 years, but we are very concerned about what the future may hold.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I understand that. It strikes me, and you touch on this in your book. When you get into fear, I find that when I've got a quote, I made a quote. Fear is the venom of risk. I love that quote. So what struck me through that, I deal with cybersecurity, and so when I go into companies and talk to them about all the things that can happen to them, I find that most Americans live in a state of denial. They
Yes,
just, it's going to be the other guy, forgetting that to the rest of the world, they're the other guy. It's always, I don't have enough money. My business isn't big enough. I don't do this. I don't, I don't, forgetting that honestly, you're just as capable of being hacked or having a data breach as anybody else.
oh yes.
They hit the NSA more than once a year. Why on earth do you think that you're not going to get hit, especially when you don't recognize the issue? So that for me, the answers to the problems always start with first recognizing what the problem is. And that means you got to overcome your fear. It's fear. Oh, I don't want this to happen. So you stick your fingers in your ears so you don't listen to all the stuff.
Right.
But that doesn't take away the risk. You still got to recognize what the problem is. And then you've got to start answering each risk with, how do I overcome this? How cybersecurity loves the term mitigate. How do I overcome it? How do I meet this risk head on? And that's what we seem to be failing to do in just about every part of
It's
life nowadays. It's
You're
filled.
so true. So you're so spot on. And you know, I was always kind of risk adverse. That's why this particular career field worked for me. When I finally found it, I fell in love with it because we do take risk in this job. And we're constantly trying to mitigate those risks. And we're trying to figure out, how do we deal with the issues that come with those risks? But this job is a risk job. I take risks every time I put on the badge and leave my house every day.
Yeah.
And so does everybody else. They just don't realize. And like I said, most people are fear is the venom of risk, because most people are paralyzed by their fear and they don't want to take those risks. You talk about, I know that, your show focuses on cybersecurity, and I think most people have no idea how vulnerable they are. And I know you cover it a lot, but our IT department here in our county probably spends about 60 to 70% of their time combating hackers, combating cybersecurity threats into this county. Trojan horse emails. It's hard for us because we are all on air cards out there in our vehicles. We're open to a lot of cyber attacks. And so, and then we just deal with all the actual people in our community who are open to those cyber attacks, who are being hacked. And then we deal with the predators online as well. So yeah, cybersecurity is honestly, this is the new future of crime. And the transnational crime syndicates, the cartels, your places out of Russia and Venezuela and China, they know that we are vulnerable on the cybersecurity end, and they can affect our country in tremendous ways without ever stepping foot into our country and on our soil. Yeah. And so it's such a huge piece, and it's something that I think most law enforcement agencies, and including mine, are behind the 8 ball on, and we're doing the best we can to catch up. But we need the taxpayer to understand it so that they will allocate those resources for us to be able to combat it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. After 12, 15 years, somewhere in there, of the most popular password in America being some form of password, an @ sign for the A and a 0 for the O, or a 1 at the end, 1, 2, 3. That's been the most popular password for over a decade. It's now number 2. Do you know what is number 1? It's the one that used to be number 2. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And if you're really attuned to this stuff, some people add 7, 8, 9. Big deal. Hackers don't even have to use cracking software to guess that one. They know that most of the folks on their list to go through, that's going to be the password in, or let me in, or QWERTY, or any of the other stuff. So you're exactly right. It's education, but it's also coming to realization with the truth. I mean, the truth is we are under attack. In the first 6 months of 2020, there were more attacks. I believe the figure is 3 times the number of attacks against Americans than all of 2019. And 2019 was a banner year for attacks. It was more than 15, 16, and 17, or 16, 17, and 18, all 3 of those years pulled together. It just amazes me. And of course, the press doesn't cover it accurately because they don't understand it. I guess that's why they don't. I do know that every group I speak to, I spoke, one of the things that led me to Arizona was I spoke to a data privacy conference here, and it reminded me how much when we used to vacation here, we loved coming to Arizona, Tucson and Phoenix both. And so I'm in a room and I'm talking to a bunch of people that own businesses where your and my medical records are stored. All government, as well as federal government, not so much, but local governments, as well as education, as well as all the different for-profit industries you can think of, they all have records. Now they're going from paper to digital, but that's still in transition. And so a lot of these people store this stuff, and a lot of them are into the digital storage. And I'm starting in through all of the stuff that goes into it. I do 2 sides of a talk. Here's the bad news. That's all the stuff that's going on. And here's the good news. Here's what you can do about it. These guys' eyes are getting like this. They didn't know. And if anybody on the planet should know, it should be them.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at how much happens, and people have no idea whatsoever.
Well, and a lot of it is, and this, you just can't keep up with it.
Yeah, that's very true.
The amount of technology is, if you are not in the technology field, you're not going to be able to keep up with the technology. The average Joe, the average cop on the beat has no clue how to keep up with it. The average homeowner, and I think that 2020 increased because those hackers knew that the American public and so many other people across the world, we had to put our kids on computers to go to school. And these kids get on these computers and they're supposed to be schooling, but they're gaming. And what it does is it opens you up for those cyber attacks. And same thing with all of our, most people were probably using VPNs, but so how many businesses and counties put all their employees at their homes and opened up their infrastructures to just open internet, where somebody could drive by and jump on and access those companies' files. So it doesn't surprise me at all that 2020 was a banner year for hackers and for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
For one, the technology, and number two, this whole COVID pandemic has forced everybody online, and I think it's like it's the playground for them.
You're
Just like your
exactly
show
right.
says, it truly is a playground for the people that have the warehouse, the warehouse and the know-how.
Yeah, you are exactly right. It wouldn't do me any good to speak to your group. You already know this stuff. It's you and I have to get the word out, apparently, because
Yes.
I can't believe how many people just don't realize it. It's not that they don't take it serious; it's that they just want to avoid the subject. They just
Yeah.
don't want to know. Now, I don't know if I want to start this now. We're going to have a break in a few minutes, but I want us to talk about you've had two different TV shows, Live PD and 60 Days In, and Live PD, three, Live PD Wanted. So why don't we start on that? Because I want to spend a little bit of time on how that's worked, lessons you've learned from it. And I mean, just really, some of the listeners will have watched you on there. They'll be familiar. Some of the stuff that comes through from that.
Well, and that's true. A lot of your listeners out in Indiana, they're going to know me from Live PD, 60 Days In, Live PD Wanted. We go back to risk, and I talk about this in the book as well. I have a whole chapter called Fame Without Fortune, where I talk about spending time on TV and the shows that we've done. But the reason we did those is because I'm not afraid to take risks. I believe I came from the business background before I got into law enforcement, and I view this job different. I view it more like a business as opposed to just government. And I also view the opportunities to portray law enforcement in a positive light, and also my industry and my agency. And I also know that recruiting, as tough as it is, this would give us a one-up on recruiting as well. So when these opportunities came along, as you know, if you've read my book, you'll know that I'm not adverse to risk.
Yeah.
We took those risks, and they paid off in tenfold, hundredfold. Live PD was a great experience. That was the first one that we jumped on board with. And if you don't know about Live PD, you have camera crews that are actually riding around with you and your deputies, and you're responding to calls and doing everything you would do on a normal basis. And you got a camera right over your shoulder or just off to the side, and they're filming everything you do.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of cops, that makes them uncomfortable, because now you are truly going to see how we treat people, and, what decisions we make. And we open ourselves up for criticism from not only general public, but also from those who are in our industry who want to critique how your tactics or how you do the job. So it takes a lot of guts and a lot of stones to be able to go out and want to do this. But we did it because, like I said, it was a good recruiting tool. And it was also an opportunity to showcase law enforcement in a popular light. And then we had 60 Days In come along. Now, 60 Days In, and what we did is we took, I think it was 7 regular people from different walks of life, and we put them secretly in our jail. When I say secretly, the inmates didn't know, and there was probably only about 5 of our employees, and they were all, at the top level, that knew of what we were doing. And we did it because how else do you get an inside look at your facility and your operation in a jail? There's no other way to do it. To be able to get inside and see it from the inmate's perspective, to understand maybe how drugs are getting in, how they're passing information, whether your programs work. Those were our goals. And so when this opportunity came, I saw a beautiful opportunity to not only get an inside look at our jail, also to showcase the second half of what sheriffs do, and probably the bigger piece, which is manage jails across America.
Right.
A lot of people forget that the sheriffs do that. But also, I did it at no cost to the taxpayer. So, from a business standpoint and a tax paying standpoint, and giving a good return on investment to taxpayers, that was a no brainer. But it was a stressful thing. And you
Yeah.
can actually catch that right now. It's trending on Netflix, season 5 of 60 Days In. Now, I know in Clark, Indiana, I think it's Clark, Indiana, just north of Louisville.
Okay.
You guys, they did
Uh-huh.
the season 1 and 2, and so we did season 5. Great opportunity. And then the live PD Wanted, that was actually the only one that I did get paid a little bit of money on. And what it was is that I would go out to New York every week, fly out on Wednesday nights. We would do the show on Thursday. I'd fly back Thursday night back home.
Uh-huh.
And what it was kind of like America's Most Wanted meets live PD, or live meets cops.
Uh-huh.
And so we showcased people who'd committed crimes, and then the live PD Nation would go out and try to help us find those people. And it was a very successful show. As a matter of fact, in March, we'd had a call, maybe April, because we had just finished our 20th episode. And they said, hey, we're bringing the show back. It's going to come back on July. And then COVID and all this other stuff hit, and
Yeah.
they pulled the shows off of A&E, or else we would continue. We'd probably be in our 40th, 50th episode by now. But great opportunities. It really, but what it does is it gives you fame especially on a local level, on a national level,
Yeah.
and you don't get the fortune that comes along with it. So
No. But, sometimes I think about that. I've enjoyed not the fame you have, but a little, just maybe 15 seconds of it. And yet I look at people who have the fortune to go along with that. Most of them are messed up, and if they're not, their kids
yeah,
are. There's
yeah.
something about the human being just isn't designed to have worshiping followers. We're just not. And
I'll tell you, it is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to get all the praise, and it's extremely difficult, even more difficult, to receive the negativity.
yeah,
You said it best. I don't think that we as humans are really equipped to deal with that amount of accolades or criticism. It is hard to deal with, and I understand, having gone through it, how it has a negative impact on your family. And I'm honest about that in my book as
yeah,
well,
you are.
the negative impacts that it has on your family. And it also has a negative impact on you on a personal level. It's how you manage it. Fortunately, I've never drank alcohol in my life. I don't have vices. I guess maybe I drink Monsters too much, but I don't I don't indulge in those things. And so if I did, I would probably be a mess if I was a
Yeah,
drinker or something else. And so, because I don't, my anchor is my religion, my anchor is my family, and that helps keep me grounded despite the what you go through when you have fame. But Jim Carrey says it best when he says, "I wish that everybody could experience fame to see that it's not what it's cracked up to be." I'm paraphrasing, but more or less that's what he said.
yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Listen, we're going to take a really short break. Um, So first off, folks, you're either listening to us in one of three methods. You're either catching us on WVLP. We're broadcast on Monday mornings from 8 to 9, Friday afternoons from 1 to 2. If you're in the central time zone, those times work for you. Adjust otherwise. Um, know that we are coming from WVLP, which is a community radio station, and I encourage you to check out their website, stream us from that. If you're needing to listen to us on demand, so you've caught us at our broadcast times, now you want to review some things on the program, check us out on Spotify or Apple Podcast, any of the podcast channels. It's the Information Playground. It's the name of the program on WVLP. It's the name of the podcast, and it's also the name of the YouTube channel. You get to see me, but you also get to see my handsome host in his cowboy hat and all ready to go. So check us out, WVLP, YouTube, and podcast, all the Information Playground. You can catch me if you have questions or thoughts about the program, Ron at ronbushconsulting.com. We're a cybersecurity consultancy. We help organizations protect themselves, protect their clients and their reputation and their data and their employees. My guest, though, is Sheriff Mark Lamb. Now, he's really big into the protection arena. Sheriff, would you let folks know how to reach you? And we'll pick up where we left off on valuable lessons.
Yeah, you can follow me on American Sheriff on Instagram, on Twitter at Sheriff Lamb 1, on Facebook at Sheriff Lamb. And there's a reason why those are different, but we don't have a lot of time today. But and then also on Parler at Sheriff Lamb as well. Those are primarily the platforms I do. On Facebook, you're not going to be able to message me. I turned that off after I got COVID this summer and everybody was so hateful. Yeah. I actually, for my wife's sake, I turned that off so like people couldn't message us directly. But you can actually catch me on any of those. And then you can get my book. You can also message me on americansheriff.com where you can pick up my book as well. And I, believe it or not, I can't afford to have anybody else helping me. So I'm the one that responds to the emails and the messages. People can't believe that, but that's me. It takes me hours a day to deal with social media. So if you have questions, you can reach out to me there. Please forgive me if I'm not extremely responsive. I'm dealing with a lot.
I understand. And I think everyone else does or should. Appreciate that. So, you strike me, you've made the statement several times, working outside your comfort zone. I think I developed the belief a long time ago, I'm just not comfortable anywhere because I'm always outside my comfort zone. This is not in my comfort zone. There's a lot to be said for that. I don't know if John Wayne truly said it or is just credited, but fear isn't the avoidance of things that scare you. And I'm paraphrasing. It's getting up in the saddle every day, even though you are scared.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if he really said that, and I've messed up the quote anyway. But
I messed up plenty of quotes.
but you get the idea. It isn't avoiding fear. It's facing them, and you can't help but be. That's what fear does. It scares you, but you face them and you overcome them anyway. And I think I
talk about that in the book. I talk about, it's not that people look at me and say, well, see, he's not scared of anything. And it's really about managed fear. I talk about managed fear. We still have it. It's down in there. Some people look like they're not afraid, but it's not that they're not afraid. It's just that they've put themselves in that fear, in that uncomfortable area for so long. And they've trained themselves appropriately to where they know how to act in those situations. When I run into a building where somebody's got a gun or into a home where there's ongoing domestic violence or somebody's calling for help, you just don't have time to process that fear. You're running towards it and you're relying on your training and your consistent putting yourself in those situations to where now you've been through it so much that yes, there's fear there, but you know how to overcome it, and you know how to protect yourself as you enter into that situation. Right. And so my recommendation to people is if you are uncomfortable, continue to put yourself in it. Stay in that area because that's the only way that you'll learn to overcome that fear. If you're afraid of the dark, the only way to overcome that is to consistently put yourself in the dark and get comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you may not you may still always have that fear of the dark, right? But at least you can navigate your way through it, and you're comfortable, and you'll survive.
Yeah, well said. Well said. You've got a couple of quotes that I really just loved. First off, you mentioned the haters earlier. Chapter 7 talks about how technology has given haters the ability to hate more people on all levels. I can't think of any truer statement I've encountered. There's a book called The Cyber Effect. Some doctor, Mary Akins, maybe out of Great Britain, did her study on this and the effect that the internet basically has had on people. Yeah. And here she mentions back in the day, before all of this, if this person was dysfunctional like this, and that person was dysfunctional like the same way, well, the odds of them being in the same town or village and encountering each other to form a group were small. unfortunately, when your location, your geographic location no longer matters, now those people can find themselves develop thousands of people into a group, a community, and now pretend that they're normal and it's
Right.
everybody else that's messed up.
Yeah.
It,
It's the cyberbullying is out of control on a world level. You know, our youth deal with it. And I even talk about in the book, just because I'm a sheriff, I teach youth groups. I said, just because I'm the sheriff and an adult doesn't mean that people don't try to cyberbully me as well.
yeah,
And there's a saying, it says the pen is mightier than the sword.
yeah,
You know, it's funny because on a national level, people are talking about defunding police because they think the sword is out of line. When in reality, the fake media, the biased media, the people online who viciously attack, that does more harm than what you're seeing. That isolated incident where a police officer maybe is too aggressive with somebody. You're seeing far more destructive behavior online. And it's not just here. Like, people aren't just, attacking me here in America or here in Arizona or in my community. I get people from all over the world that try to attack you sometimes.
yeah.
And so it's created this weird place where we're at in society where there's no repercussions for you. You know, in the old days, and I talk about in the book, if you challenged somebody, you ran the risk of getting punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that was, look, in the old West, if you called somebody a liar, you could shoot them in the street and it was okay. And I'm not saying that that's okay, but I'm saying
Right.
this is where we've transitioned.
Yeah.
Now you have people, they have a platform and they can attack anybody and everybody, and they can do it without repercussions, and they can do it where on a level where it makes them relevant. And if you go and look at a lot of these people's profiles, and this sounds terrible, but they're nobodies, they're goofs most of the time. They have no following. They're just trying to find their place in this world, and they're doing it wrong, and they're doing it by attacking people, and they're doing it um, by projecting their personal loathing, how their dislike for themselves onto other people. And it's sad. It's sad that we're in that state. With all the good that comes from the technology, that is some of the bad that comes from technology. The bad part, and what concerns me the most, is that it's happening amongst our children and our most innocent, and they're not equipped to deal with it. They have not been through enough life experience to deal with the negativity, and that's why we're seeing increased suicides. We're seeing suicides on all age levels as well, because people just cannot deal with the hate and all of that. And even the accolades, we go back and talk about it. I'll just say this real quick. Even the accolades, when you get the accolades and those disappear because you no longer in the limelight, you no longer have that fame, those people fall apart because they no longer have the upside of it, and they no longer have somebody telling them how great they are. And that is a tough thing to deal with. So it is something that we're going to have to manage, because it's not going away. You know this, the information playground, this is not going away. It is something that we're going to have to learn to deal with as a society, and hopefully we can correct. But the pen is mightier than the sword.
Excellent, excellent. There's an excellent documentary on Netflix, I think, called The Social Dilemma.
Yes,
If
excellent.
anyone that hasn't watched that, I encourage them to, because they talk now about how the algorithms work. These are people that have worked at Facebook and worked at Twitter and all the others. I only do LinkedIn. The others, if you get an invitation from me on Facebook, it's not me, because I have nothing to do with Facebook. They're hacked too often, and they just work against us. Honestly, they appeal to the folks that are, how do I say it, not that don't cherish the same values that maybe you and I do. And
Yes.
so once they start down that road, either side of the fence, whether you're talking liberal or conservative, it just keeps taking you further out. If you're leftist to start with or rightist to start with, you keep going till you're ultra left or alt right. Those are the buzz terms. It just keeps taking you there, and pretty soon your news just feeds what you already suspect, and pretty soon you take all of that stuff as fact. It's not. None of that stuff
Yeah.
is fact, or it's spin.
And And the worst part is there's so much information out there on, in this space, that you can find the information that will support what you want to believe.
Yeah.
And it's there to support you. And then you can say, well, you're wrong because I saw it on the internet.
Yeah.
Look, I don't, this is going to be a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I don't wear a mask typically, and I'm not for mask mandates. And primarily it's not because I don't, people think, oh, I don't want to protect other people. That's ridiculous, because I go out and do it every day. I put my life on the line. That's how much I'm willing to do it.
Right.
I just don't think it's government's place to mandate it. And I think we live in a free country, and I think we need to exercise more personal responsibility. And that's the American way. But you'll have people that say you're not listening to the science. Well, I can go out and show you just as many articles in science to say otherwise. So my point being is that we can find whatever we want to support our narrative or our particular stance we have for something. And that's dangerous because, like you said, for those who are on the extreme right or on the extreme left, it gives them the fuel to continue to move further and further out. And we're
Yeah.
seeing that division in our country now. And I think that if everybody were to turn off their news media stations
Hmm.
and were to just spend a little bit more time in their community and with their families, you would see a stark turnaround in this country.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you want to listen to what's going on in politics, C-SPAN is probably the best. I mean, it may be boring to sit there and listen to all these people, talk about what they think's important, but that's the only
Well,
way you know that it's true,
and
really.
if you watch C-SPAN, you'll realize that we elected a bunch of goofs to run this country. Look, I spent a lot of time in politics. I spent a lot of time around people who are elected officials. When I first started 4 years ago, I was just a normal guy that got into politics, and I'm a law enforcement guy, but I wanted to be part of the solution and not the problem. I was sorely disappointed at some. I used to say to my wife, "These are the people that are running our country and our states."
Yeah.
It's not. We do need better people to step up, but the way I'm afraid that the way we attack our elected officials and the way that technology has allowed people to have a voice, what you're doing is you're weeding it out to where good people are just never going to want to run for office. It can be a miserable experience. For all the good that comes with it, there is bad as well. And so you've got to have just the right people, and unfortunately a lot of the good people aren't going to want to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You've got a chapter, chapter 4, where you talk about the boxer, and again, I love this quote. You got to have the heart to win the fight. Um,
Yep.
that's a great chapter. Would you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, in that chapter, it's not a fight until you meet resistance. And I
Yeah.
think that so many people think they're performing and they're ready for it, but it's truly not a fight until you meet resistance. And in that chapter, I talk about listening to a podcast with a very well-known boxing promoter and trainer, and he talks about probably one of the most well-known boxers, who I would not name because I don't want him to show up at my house and KO me. Um, but he starts talking about his record, and then he says, okay, well, if he's 50-6, he's really 0-6,
Yeah.
because all the other fights were just exhibitions, like he was hitting a heavy bag. But until he had those fights where he met resistance, that was truly when he had a fight on his hands, and he was 0-6 in those fights. And
Yeah.
that's how life is. Like, we can talk a good game, and we can do this because we're hitting the heavy bag, but how many of you have the heart to truly win? And that's really what defines people. I always know that when I walk into a room, I don't have to worry about a lot of those people, because I know that just by numbers, what is it called? It's called the mix something theory, where 80% of people will do 20% of the work, 20% of the week, but 80. So I know that I don't have to worry about 80% of the people. Only 20% of the people likely have the heart to
Yeah.
deal with life, to deal with whatever situation we're in. And so I really just hoping that people will just realize that you have it in your heart. You do. But sometimes in certain situations and in very challenging times in our lives, you have to dig down in, and you've got to find that fight in your heart, and you've got to rise to the occasion and succeed. It's in there. Most people just don't. They just don't know it. They haven't tapped into it enough. But yeah, you've got to have the heart to win the fight.
Yeah, I love that. I can't think of that guy's name either. I always hear it referred to as the 80-20 rule. And that escapes that lets you out of trying to remember names, which I'm
Yeah,
awful at.
right.
Most of us are.
Mhm.
So we've talked a lot about how your experiences in law enforcement, but in life, and again, your book does an excellent job of talking about your life experiences, where it's brought you all the way from childhood to now. Where do you see law enforcement? You mentioned it just a minute ago, the defund the police. I just can't imagine how that ever took root. I mean, who's the person you call when you're in trouble?
Yeah.
It's not your next door neighbor. If you got a guy breaking into your house, it's a cop. You want someone who's on the right side of the law to rescue you. Why would you defund them? But nevertheless, it's a movement. So with all that's going on, and I appreciate what you said earlier about, you know, I think it's probably 98% good cops and 2% bad, but
Yeah.
who are you always going to hear about? The 2%.
Right.
So where do you see law enforcement over the next 4 years?
Well, and I think it's going to be more than 4 years. I think that's a great question. I was just at the White House last week, and we were sitting down with some of President Trump's people, and nobody knows the outcome of this election. It's still undetermined. And
Yeah.
he was talking to us. We talked about border security. We talked about a lot of other things. But at the very end, he said something that I've been saying for the last several months as I was going around talking at campaign events, and I said, he said, over the next 4, 8, 12 years, he goes, I think that the major challenge that you will face in law enforcement in this country is the rule of law. Now, what has made America so great is our belief in the rule of law, our enforcement of the rule of law. There are other countries in this world that have constitutions that are democracies, yet they still have failed because they cannot implement or enforce the rule of law to the level that we have successfully done it for a long time. That doesn't mean there's not the faults. There are bad judges, there's bad police officers, and the ball has been dropped in many cases. And people have been put in prison wrongfully. And there's also been people that aren't in prison that should be. I mean, it is not a perfect situation, but our rule of law in this country has been what has made us flourish and be successful. And so I think that if you read books like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals and different things, you will understand that there is a reason why they talk about things like defunding the police.
Mhm.
Some of the strengths in this country have been the rule of law. And if you are an anarchist, if you are somebody who dislikes America and what it stands for, and you want to tear it down and build something else up, whether it's socialism, communism, or something else
Mhm.
that you think is better, then what you have to do is tear away at the fabric of what it is. And if you look, they've torn away at our ability to worship, because you can't have any higher authority than what the government is if you want to implement those things. You have to talk about defunding the police, because the rule of law has been what is one of the strengths of this country for so long. You also have to deteriorate the family unity. And I'm not going to get into how you do that, but there are doing it.
Mhm.
And because I don't want to get into political stuff on your show, but they are tearing away at the family unity as well. And these are just a few examples of the talking points. I view past the talking point. They are very smart in what they're doing at trying to tear away at what this country is and what it has been, because they see the faults in it. But I'm here to tell you, if you think that America is a bad country, go live somewhere else for a little while. I talk
Yeah.
about that in my book. You will understand how beautiful of a country America is. And I'm here to tell you firsthand that I can go out in that desert today. As a matter of fact, I'll get an email here shortly that we apprehended probably 20 to 30 people today in the desert. So you're telling me that Americans who think this isn't a great country, people are dying to come to America because they want a piece of the American dream. If we lose what America stands for and what we have here in this country, there is no other place on this planet that you can find it. We are this last bastion. Globally, other countries look to us as a light, a beacon on the hill, because we truly represent that last fabric of freedom and light in this world. If America loses that and we do it to ourselves, it will have a global effect like you won't believe. So there's so much involved. I know I really went off on a tangent, but what I see over the next 4 years next 8 years, 12 years, is a real challenge to restore people's faith in the rule of law, to make sure that we can get judges who will take bias and political agendas out of their decisions, and that we can ensure that we're hiring good people that will do this law enforcement job very well, and that we reestablish those relationships between community and law enforcement, especially in the areas where it's been damaged severely. We've got a lot of work to do. We're up for the challenge. Like I say, my favorite quote from Braveheart is, "We didn't get all dressed up for nothing." So we're here. We're still doing the job. We're ready to do the job, and we need good men and women out there. Don't just sit and complain about it. If you think it needs to change, I challenge you to apply and become part of the solution, and come on and work in law enforcement. Let's be part of if you think it needs to change, be part of the change.
Excellent. Excellent advice. Excellent call. So we're at that part where we're getting ready to say goodbye to everyone. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I thoroughly enjoyed your book. I've enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to the next one. Let me just remind everyone who they're listening to and how to reach us. First off, I'm Ron Bush. I own Ron Bush Consulting, and we underwrite the Information Playground. And we do that on several different formats. We do it on WVLP. Go to WVLP.org, find out about the station and how you can get involved with that. And that's part of the community. You'll find us on podcast platforms and YouTube as well, all under the Information Playground. Sheriff Lamb, I appreciate your work ethic. You talk a lot about that. We didn't get to the whole book. There's just so much in every chapter. I love your work ethic, and I love the idea that, you get back on the horse, is the old expression. You get knocked down, well, you get back up. And you've done that time and time again. I've really appreciated our time together. How can folks contact you? Let's do it one more time.
Yeah, and thank you, Ron, for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I love what you're doing in the Information Playground too, because this is the future of threats with law enforcement, is the cybersecurity issues. So thank you for bringing light to that. Yeah, you can get my book at Amazon. It's American Sheriff: Traditional Values in a Modern World. You can also pick up my wife's. Hers is The Sheriff's Wife, holding it all together behind the scenes in politics. She talks about it from the other side, from the spouse's side. Not a lot of politicians' wives will talk about what it's like to be married to a politician, be in the political world, and also that fame piece too, having a little piece of fame, what it's like to deal with that. So it's a great read as well. She's a much better writer than I, so you'll probably enjoy that book more. So yes, American Sheriff: Traditional Values in a Modern World. You can get it on Amazon. You can also get a personalized copy on my website, AmericanSheriff.com. And I just appreciate the support. Thank you so much for taking time to read the book. It means a lot to me. And I'm just hoping that some people will be able to take something out of it, that life is not easy. We're going to get kicked in the face. And it's true. You just got to dust yourself off, get back in the saddle, believe that good things come, and that risk is okay and challenges are fine. And it's what defines us and makes us better as people. And I think hopefully people will realize that my main goal in this life is to be the best me that I can be, and share the gifts and talents that God's bestowed on me with those around me in this world. And so thank you for the opportunity to be a voice today. And thank you for supporting the law enforcement, what you do. And thank you to your listeners for all of the support they give us as well.
Excellent. Well said. And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, folks, for listening to us and watching us. Please remember to tune in to the Information Playground and all the different platforms we've talked about. Sheriff Lamb, all the best to you and your family.
Thank you, Ron. God bless. Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Thank you.